Hey you beautiful people, welcome back to a new video on our channel Read Travel Become. The topic of this video is one of the most requested topics on my channel. Since the time I started this channel, this was one of the most requested topics that do make a video on philosophy books to read, philosophy books for beginners, how do we start reading philosophy, what is philosophy, etc. I always wanted to make a philosophy book recommendation video where I would just recommend these books to you guys, but I thought I should take a more nuanced approach to this because philosophy has a lot of domains. Philosophy is not just one type of philosophy. There is the modern philosophy, there's the Western philosophy, there's Eastern philosophy, there's a condensed philosophy, and then again there are so many philosophers out there. There's Seneca, Aristotle, Plato, Kant, Camus. You don't understand where do you start from, right? Because there are so many popular philosophers. In this video, I'm going to tell you a structured approach of how you should start reading philosophy. I'm going to do this by basically dividing philosophies into different parts, and for each domain, I'm going to recommend some very easy books to read. The last domain in this video is going to be the most interesting one, which is going to be a condensed philosophy, where I'm going to recommend some books which are very hilarious in nature. They basically cover all types of philosophies, but they are written in a very humorous way. Before starting the video, I would request all of you to like this video. If you like this video, YouTube basically recommends this video to more and more people. So by liking this video, you are indirectly giving value to someone by sharing this video. Make sure you watch the video till the end. You may never know which thought or fact may resonate with you and change the course of your life. So let's get started. Okay, so what exactly is philosophy? Humans have been able to deep dive into the mysteries of nature. We have charted equations by which we can predict the motions of planets. We know most of the things about light, about gravity. We know so much about universes. In fact, we also know so much about our ecosystem on the earth. We know so much about water, elements and everything. We also know so much about our body. We know what diseases to fight. We know how our body works. But we still haven't figured out how the brain works. The brain is still a big mystery. On top of this, we also don't know what is consciousness. Where does consciousness come from? When a baby is being formed in the mother's womb, we can biologically explain how the body is formed. But we cannot explain either biologically or physically or even by philosophy that how does consciousness come into play. This is where the birth of philosophy begins, which I feel is thinking about something, which I feel is explaining something by logical reasoning, trying to understand the world around us. That is philosophy according to me. Philosophy is basically trying to question everything, trying to question how you think, trying to question the universe around you, trying to question anything and everything. Naval Ravikant has frequently recommended a book called David Deutsch's But the Beginning of Infinity, which talks about this very concept, that how do we explain things? How are humans able to explain the nature around them? Philosophy basically was popularized by these Greek philosophers because they used to have these courtrooms where philosophers used to come and discuss. The Western philosophy was born out of this idea. The Eastern philosophy, which consists of Taoism, which consists of Indian philosophy, was developed way before the Western philosophy. It has got its roots way before the Western philosophy came into play. Now let's talk about the Western philosophy. In the Western philosophy is divided into three parts: the ancient philosophy, the medieval philosophy, and the modern philosophy. In the ancient philosophy, there were philosophers like Plato, Aristotle, Seneca. The whole idea of Stoicism came around this. Epictetus was there. There are many others. In the medieval philosophy, Christianity came into picture. A lot of Christian ideals were supported and popularized. And in the modern philosophy, there were modern philosophers in the 18th and 19th century, namely Hegel, there were Kant, there was Camus, there was Franz Kafka, and many other such existential philosophers. Nietzsche was again a modern philosopher who popularized nihilism. Now I'm going to recommend books from the first domain, which is the Socratic Dialogue. So Socrates was one of the most popular Greek philosophers of his time. He started this whole idea of questioning who you are. And in the Socrates Dialogue, if you want to learn more about this domain, the first book recommendation would be The Republic by Plato. Now Plato is again the founding fathers of philosophy, they call him that, where this book is particularly about justice. This book talks about how a society deserves justice, how a society works, how can a society progress. The book is basically a series of question and answers by Plato. He's asking himself and the society some basic questions about how the society is working, how the republic and how the democratic society works, what is communism, what is socialism. So if you want to deep dive into political philosophy in the Roman times, in the Greek times, this can be your first book. It is very easy to read, and it's mostly about society and justice. So that would be my first recommendation in this domain. Now let's hop on to the next domain. So the next domain is all about Stoicism. You might have heard about Stoicism because currently it's very popular. Why is it popular? Because the ideals represented in the Stoicism, which was founded back then, are very relevant today. The whole idea of Stoicism is basically there's a lot of distraction around you and there's a lot of things to do around you, but how you react to those things determines the quality of your life. That is the ultimate truth, that one day you're definitely going to die, and now how you react to things around you basically determines the quality of your life. Stoicism is very popular because of Ryan Holiday. You might have heard of Ryan Holiday's books. If you want to know more about a modern approach of Stoicism, you can definitely pick any of Ryan Holiday's books. Ego is the enemy, Obstacle is the way, Stillness is the key. All of these books are heavily dependent on Stoicism. But Stoicism was started by Zeno back in Greece, and the principles of Stoicism were popularized in open courtyards, on roads, because they thought Stoicism should be preached to everyone. So Stoicism spread very rapidly. The earlier type of philosophy was just focused on kings and the advisors and the intellectuals, but Stoicism was spread throughout. That's why Stoicism is so popular. The best book to know most about Stoicism is Letters from a Stoic by Seneca. This book is basically diary entries by Seneca, who was one of the greatest philosophers of his time. He talks about all the aspects of life through his letters. This is more of a conversation, this is more of a dialogue. It's not a story, it's not a preachy kind of a narrative. Seneca basically talks about all the spheres of his life. If you want to know more about Stoicism, you can also read the Meditations by Marcus Aurelius, the great Roman emperor. So basically this emperor, during his time, when he was a king, when he was not a king, he used to write down all of his thoughts in a notebook. That notebook is basically this book, Meditations. All of Ryan Holiday's works are based on this book, Meditations. So if you want to get a feel about Stoicism, this domain, these are the books which you can read. Next, let's talk about Eastern philosophy. Whenever the term philosophy comes up, I've seen that many people just recommend and talk about Western philosophy. I personally feel that all of the Western philosophy is just a derivation of the Eastern philosophy. By Eastern philosophy, I mean the Mahabharata. Like, Mahabharata contains literally any and every type of philosophy. Whatever domain you want to choose, whatever domain you want to learn about, Mahabharata has it included. The Bhagavad Gita has every little thing. Also, along with this, there's a very popular book called Siddhartha by Hermann Hesse. Naval Ravikant says that this book he has gifted the most in his entire life. He has given out hundreds of copies of books. This is about Buddhism. This is about the Zen nature of your desires. So again, that is another recommendation which you can read if you want to know more about Eastern philosophy. If you talk specifically about Japan, there's a very popular Japanese philosophy called Taoism. Taoism is another very popular type of philosophy, just like Stoicism. In Taoism, there is an idea of the Tao. The Tao is basically a force in nature. It's like that magic. If you have seen Star Wars, it's just like the Force. May the Force be with you. That Force. So there's a Tao in nature, and you should be in harmony with that Tao. Tao is also like Zen, which is like an absence of all desires and becoming one with the nature. There's a book called Tao Te Ching by Lao Tzu. I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right. This book is the basis of all Taoism. If you want to read about Taoism in a more easy way, in the most easy way, basically, if you want to explain it to kids, there's a book called The Tao of Pooh, which is basically the character Winnie the Pooh. He is experiencing Taoism through his adventures. So if you want to explain Taoism in a very easy way, you can definitely read this book. So this domain basically covers all of the Eastern philosophies. You can read Mahabharata, you can read Siddhartha, you can read Taoism, and you can read Winnie the Pooh's Taoism. Next, let's talk about the modern philosophy. What happened in modern philosophy was, in the 18th and 19th centuries, there were some individuals who were experiencing a lot of social changes around their life. We had industrial revolution, we had the world wars, we had a rapid expansion of everything. And during this time, some individuals really thought about their life in a very eccentric way. They talked about how alone they are. They talked about how the society is so aberrant, how the society is so confusing to them. Many philosophers came into this time, namely Kant, there was Nietzsche, there was Camus, there was Franz Kafka. All of these people were very, very existential in nature. They talked about existentialism a lot. They talked about how individually they are so alone and devoid of emotions. In this particular domain, if you want to know more about this kind of a domain, you can read The Stranger by Albert Camus. It's a very short novel, you can call it a novella. It's about a man who is devoid of any emotion. He does not feel any emotions. People are getting killed around him. His mother dies, and he has a lot of problems in his own life, but he does not feel any emotions. And he's trying to navigate what is the meaning of emotions and how is he reacting to different things around him. And in contemplating all of these things, he commits a murder, and still he does not feel anything. So there's a whole dialogue around it of how existentialism comes into picture. Then you can also read Metamorphosis by Franz Kafka, which is again very existential in nature. There's a very popular term called Kafkaesque, which is basically the absurdity of the society. Kafka has screamed of how absurd he thought the rules of society were. Nihilism is very similar to existentialism. Nihilism is a concept which was popularized by Friedrich Nietzsche. For this, you can read the book Beyond Good and Evil. All of these books are very, very easy to read. They're not very difficult. You just need a frame of mind. You just need that openness and receptivity to read any kind of literature. It makes you think. It makes you think a lot. It makes you challenge your belief systems, because we have been conditioned in a certain way. We see society in a certain way. And when you read these type of books, you feel something different, you think something differently, and that is what is the goal of philosophy. It's not to follow anything, it's not to have a principle in life, it's just to make you think. It's just to make you think in many different ways so that you can know what best resonates with you. Okay, I know it's gotten a little heavy with all of those terms and all of those philosophies. There are 2 books in the Condensed Philosophy section which I'm going to recommend. Forget all of these books. If you don't want to go hardcore into philosophy, unless you want to deep dive into philosophy, just read these 2 books. You would get a thorough understanding of all the types of philosophy. The first book is The Pig That Wants to Be Eaten. This book is basically a collection of 100 thought experiments which you can discuss with people. So they have given short experiments and then they have given a discussion around this experiment. Let me give you an example. Let's say there was a scientist called Mary. It's called Mary's Thought Room Experiment. Let's say Mary knows everything about the color red. She knows how the color reflects all the other lights. She knows what the spectroscopy is. She knows what the wavelength of light reflects this color red. She basically knows everything about the color red. But there's a twist here. What if Mary is colorblind? She knows everything about red. She has studied the color red in depth, but she cannot see the color red. So what do you think? Does Mary know what red is, or she doesn't know what red is? So this is one thought experiment. Then there is a thought experiment about the ship of Theseus. Let's say there's a ship and you break it down into many different parts, and then you replace these parts with similar parts and make a new ship, and with the old parts you construct another ship. Now which ship would be more close to the original ship? The newly constructed, newly parts replaced ship, or the original part ship? So this is a ship of Theseus thought experiment. All of these experiments are written in this book in a very, very light way. And they've given a reference of where this philosophy came from. Was it Hume's philosophy? Was it Epictetus' philosophy? Was it Seneca's philosophy? They've given it all here. This is a great book if you want to start philosophy basically. And next there's another book called Plato and Platypus Visit a Bar. This is a collection of jokes, but philosophy jokes, not normal jokes. It's like Rene Descartes' famous line was, "I think therefore I am." So maybe he goes to a coffee shop, the barista asks him that, "Do you want cream in your coffee?" And he's like, "I think not." And then you think about, he has said the line, "I think therefore I am." So there's a hilarious situation around that. So for many different philosophers, they've given out jokes on all these philosophies, so you understand these philosophies better. So this is a gold recommendation if you want to deep dive into philosophy. Not deep dive exactly, if you want to start philosophy. Okay, so that was the video guys. I hope you like all of the recommendations. I hope you got a lot of recommendations in this video. I'm gonna jot down all of the books which I have mentioned in the description down below. Also, I share some of the learnings which I read from books into my newsletter. You can subscribe to that newsletter. I'll put the link again in the description below. Thank you so much for watching the video till here. If you like the video, please don't forget to share this video and like this video. Thank you so much for all the love and support. Lots of interesting content is lined up which I'm gonna upload in a few weeks. Thank you so much. That's all for this video. See you in the next one. Bye bye.